Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Learn to Love podcast, your guide to everything love, sex, intimacy, and relationships. Each week, your host, Zach Beach, interviews new experts on love, including couples therapists, relationship coaches, sex educators, and best-selling authors. Learn the best tips and cutting-edge wisdom to better love yourself, others, and the world. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello, beautiful souls. I'm so positively delighted that you could join us on the Learn to Love podcast. I am your host, Zach Beach, and for today's episode, we have the incredible and illustrious author, teacher, and religious scholar, Andrew Harvey. Andrew Harvey is most well known for his incredible nonfiction books on spiritual and mystical themes, including Way of Passion, a celebration of Rumi, and teachings of the Christian mystics. Andrew Harvey is the founder and director of the Institute for Sacred Activism, an international organization focused on inviting concerned people to take up the challenge of our contemporary global crises by becoming inspired, effective, and practical agents of institutional and systemic change in order to create peace and sustainability. Andrew also wrote the book Radical Passion, Sacred Love and Wisdom in Action, which is exactly how I think of Andrew. He has a radical passion for all of life, with a heart simply exuding life and a life path of wise action for the benefit of us all. According to Andrew himself in the following interview, he is hopelessly in love with life. So I hope you also fall in love with life throughout this interview. Let's begin. So greetings. Hello. Welcome, Andrew. How are you today?
I am wonderful. Really wonderful.
I'm very wonderful too. I want to say I was looking forward to this interview all week, and it's such an honor to have you on the show. I was first exposed to your work when I was studying Christian mysticism as part of my grad school, and that's when I came across your book. I even hold it up. The Son of Man, The Mystical Path to Christ. And that was just the beginning. And I was absolutely blown away by your huge body of work. And I thought to myself, how is this guy so prolific? And then I saw you speak and I was like, this guy is on fire. You speak with such vigor and passion and aliveness. And let's just start there. What brings you alive?
What brings me alive is finding out that I am hopelessly in love with life, with the force that burns in every atom and every quark and neutrino, that great force of endless expansion, endless evolution. That's what makes me alive.
And do you find that this is connected to the mystical experience? Do you yourself identify?
It is the mystical experience. That's what the experiences are for, is to take you into the beginnings of the mystery of absolutely simple being and becoming. Just being yourself is being divine and human at the same time, utterly transcendent, utterly immanent. As divine when you are picking your nose is when you're chanting mantras, and as human also. So that's what is opening up inside me. And I think in many people, I don't think I'm unique, unfortunately. The part of me would still like to be. I think I'm part of a great birthing that's taking place in the middle of this enormous catastrophe, this dark night, this great evolutionary nightmare. I think the duty of all of us at this moment who are feeling this joy, feeling this birth, is to share its wine, share its beauty, share its revelation, share its sweetness, share its vastness, so that people can find the deepest encouragement in the middle of the deepest dismay. This is birth time, so we have to do some serious pushing, and we're only going to push that seriously if we really believe in the birth that's coming out through so much struggle. But it's worth believing in, yes.
So I'm going to have to jump ahead of my question because you're bringing up sort of this mysticism and love for this life that we are in. And I think many people want to have an open heart that loves this life, but there's so much suffering and there's so much of a crisis that is happening right now. And you write this in your book: the activist who is not a practicing mystic will burn out quickly in the horribly cynical and difficult atmosphere of our world.
Yes.
And
And the mystic who isn't an activist will remain ethereal and not wholly embodied, because what's trying to be born is a new kind of human being who is simultaneously mystical and activist, able to connect with the absolute transcendent, the divine, and able to be present as a presence of compassion and passion for justice in everything he or she does or creates. That's the new human. That's the anthropos. That's the true Christ. That's the realized embodied Buddha. That's the great dream realized on the earth that has been dreamed by all the great mystical traditions, but is now being born in this vast cataclysmic birth-death process we're going through. That's astounding.
I often think about that darkness that comes before birth, right? We came into being in the darkness of the womb, and often this idea of this darkest before the dawn. And before we talk about the dark night that perhaps this world is in right now, let's talk about the dark night in general. I believe it was first coined by St. John of the Cross. I don't know if it was before him.
It was one of the coinages of it, but this process that the Dark Night is a name for has been known in all of the great initiatory processes of humanity, because they all came to know through the exploration of the mystery itself that there comes a moment when you die in life. You're stripped of all of your fantasies, your supports, your grounds, your concepts, your ideas, your sanity as you understood it, because none of those things will help you anymore. And what will help you is to be dismantled, dismembered, disorientated, totally bewildered, totally beaten out of your mind by distress, but clinging on to the beloved like a drowning person clings on to a dinghy in the middle of a storm, and seeing what happens then. And what happens then is the miracle of a great change, which you couldn't do on your own because it meant your death first. But the death is such a blessing because it leads to the experience in your whole being, including your body, of all of the love energies of the One that then open up your mind to be a servant of adoration and law and the purest, most amazing order, your heart to be the servant of total compassion in action, and your whole body to be realized as what your body is, a living, pulsing temple of the soul, utterly holy, utterly sacred, utterly divine, just as it is right now, because absolutely drenched by the love juices of the Mother Father. Isn't that amazing? That is the most beautiful, holy, and it's actually the great discovery at the core of all of the mystical traditions. So it cannot be a fantasy, and people have lived it. And it's time for that great, holistic, integrated, bisexual vision, bi-emotional vision to be brought into the core of the human experience, so that everyone can come into their human divinity blessed and honored and joyful and given the tools to expand their capacity for love and for love in action. That would transfigure our human experience. And it's here, it's coming. It's a big revolution.
Wow, you bring up so much. Let's go into mysticism in today's world, because I feel like to a lot of people, it's almost a historical artifact. Like if you want to learn about mysticism, go back in time, go to the greats, go to Rumi and Kabir and St. John of the Cross. And it almost seems like a vestige of a different time. There's no way you can be infatuated with all of life in today's, as you mentioned, cynical and challenging world. to put it another way, a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, mysticism, that's those swirling little Sufis over there, like spinning around in a circle. Oftentimes it's diminished.
Everybody's vastly underestimating themselves. I think I hear you. I love this. I love the subtlety of your question, but I would just like to pierce through it by saying, I think everyone comes to lonely, questioning moments when they realize that what they most want is to be one with reality. What they most want is to know that they are loved and protected by the mystery. Everyone has that inside them. That is the living spark of the divine consciousness that's given as an original blessing to every human being, in fact, to every being, every sentient being, in fact, to rocks, to everything has that blessing of consciousness that enables it to be secretly one with the one that created it. So I never assumed that the people listening to what I have to say aren't equally gifted with divine consciousness as myself. I speak to that in them because I know if I speak myself authentically, their authentic self will hear it and know that somebody's trying to tell them a wonderful truth that actually belongs to them already.
And this takes me to something else, a line I love from you, which was, there is only one journey and one traveler. Each being is a unique face of this traveler. And is that what you experience? Like when you're at the grocery store?
Well, yes, I think you come to the moment in your life when you realize this is not your enemy to enlightenment, this thing that you're in, your body, your ego, your crazy life. It's actually the way in which enlightenment is appearing. It's your own ragged, amazing, terrible, kind, crazy, sweet self. And that is a tremendous relief because you don't try anymore. You love more and more. And that reverses the whole journey. It stops it being one of achievement and becomes one of tuning, one of living more musically, more ecstatically, more tenderly, more precisely at every moment, attuned to that love energy that is the only final reality. What else could there possibly be?
What else is there to do?
No, and that's everything. Because if you make that tuning, and it's not complicated, everybody, the big bullshit around mysticism is that it's complicated. The reality is that it's so simple, and we're so complicated that we have to go through a lot of simplifying before we get down with its simplicity. And the way to get down with it is to start believing that it's real and to start moving towards it as you would to an unbelievably holy, extraordinary, astounding, utterly mind-shattering mystery with real awe, real devotion, real adoration, real amazement. Please help me see just a little of the majesty and the beauty you must be if you really exist, right? So that's the preparation. And then there are the simple practices. And there's such simple practices that can get you the whole way and far beyond anything you imagine. And that's why the great revolutionaries like Kabir, for example, only gave one practice. He just said, say the name of God by whatever name you worship God, and just say it in your heart, and miracles will unfold for you. Love will teach you directly. You just have to turn up loving love. Adoring love, and love will do the rest. Love will reveal to you miracles of unity you could never imagine, because you can't imagine them until you're dead and alive at the same time.
Out of curiosity, is there a name of God that you find yourself coming back to?
Oh, yes. I am deeply in love with Jesus as the Christ, because the Jesus I have met is so much vaster and so much more immense and beautiful and holy and passionate than the Jesus of the church. It's a Jesus that the great women mystics knew. It's the Jesus that Mary Magdalene knew. It's the Jesus that I've discovered through his grace inside myself. So it doesn't mean that I'm a Christian in that sense. It means that I'm having a relationship with the beloved as Jesus, which is an overwhelming honor and an overwhelming challenge, but also an overwhelming beauty, because he is so completely and absolutely beautiful in every aspect of his nature and his path and his service and his unbelievable nobility.
Well, I feel like we have to talk about the blasphemy of the mystical path and how so many mystics throughout time were prosecuted.
The blasphemy, that's a note. Oh, you're getting okay.
I recently found this Sufi phrase, and I don't want to get it wrong, but it's like, go with happiness to the gallows, just like Al-Hallaj did.
Yes.
And Mansur al-Hallaj was a mystic who was persecuted and went to the gallows for their beliefs. And we see this time and time again, that a person steeped in a certain religious institution has a certain mystical experience, or maybe a continuation of a mystical experience. And the people in charge do not like that.
Well, they never like it. Don't worry about them liking it. They never will like it, because they realize it's profoundly dangerous to all their games of hierarchy and control, because it's uncontrollable. When the blaze happens of awakenings, it's not something that you've earned. You've done the work, but you can't earn it. It's given by grace, and it's experienced as overwhelming ecstatic grace and gratitude. Otherwise, it wouldn't be enlightenment. It would just simply be another experience. So it's realizing that something absolutely immense is given you as a human being to understand is yours by divine blessing. It's already yours. You're just discovering how amazing the gift really is.
Let's talk about what we already have and what we need to release, shed, burn away, purify in order to get there. And I think there's a lot of different terms for this idea of emptying. I think in Sufi, we fana to become baka, we have gnosis, we have shunyata of emptiness. And I would also love to hear from you how this might tie into sacred activism, particularly because this idea of letting go of all rigid concepts and beliefs is very contrary to modern, say, political discourse that encourages us to be as firm as possible in our belief system. But also just in today's material world, we're told to accumulate and to take in more and more. And that our task as a human being is to accumulate and take on as much as possible. So what are we letting go of to discover what has always been there?
What we're letting go of are the barriers to loving completely. With our awakened minds, our ecstatic hearts, our beautifully conscious, tender, naturally loving, sensual, divinely inspired bodies. That's what we are meant to be. And we need to work with humility, but also with deep joy on anything in us that prevents us from being in that state of absolute groundedness and absolute tender availability to every other. And that requires a constant tuning of your mind to the great peace, to the great silence, to the great spaciousness. It requires a tuning of your heart to the vast, spacious, burning compassion that is the essential nature of your heart, as recognized in all the traditions. And it requires, especially now, a blessing of your body as absolutely beloved and holy as itself, a living temple of your soul's manifestation. That is a major shift that has to be all of our real inner working, because when it happens, a whole new level of power belongs to you humbly and naturally, because you're no longer secretly divided in any way. You're living undivided as a living, transcendent, immanent, human, divine being. So anything that prevents that realization being your living experience is what you need to work on, because it's all a lie. It's all a result of imbalance. It's all a result of not being tuned in your being to where you need to be. And the beautiful news is that you can be tuned. And you can learn how to tune yourself. It will teach you. The music itself will teach you how to tune yourself to it. You have to change the way you live to have so sublime an experience.
I always take notes during these interviews, and you are the hardest person I have to keep up with, because it's just a waterfall of beautiful, poetic, ecstatic language. And I'd love to hear more.
Thank you.
I love.
I'm speaking from my heart. That's what the heart is like, isn't it? It's not. That's the way my heart speaks, because it's been trained by Rumi and Kabir. I plunged into translating these great beings because I wanted to marry my heart to their heart, and they graced me with that marriage because they thought, this crazy guy is spending all this time in our universe. We better kiss him all over and bring him into the furnace with us. And they did. And I think this is an amazing thing for people to know, is that there's so much help for us at this moment. The greatest help is the extremity of the crisis. We all have to face that we're potentially facing total destruction on every level quite soon if this madness continues. But that's a tremendous gift too, because it forces us to ask ourselves the question, what do we really care about? What do we really want? What do we really want to be in this potentially overwhelming situation? What are we going to become? What are we going to believe in enough to give our lives to? And the great message that the mystics, especially the evolutionary mystics, are saying is, and it's confirmed on multiple levels of the reality that we're living through, they're saying that there is a potential for the birth of a new kind of divine humanity, that the great prophets and mystics have prefigured, sometimes by living it for us. But now it has to be a global event, and that global event is going to go through an apocalyptic rending, a death that looks like the end, but actually is the birth canal of the impossible possible. And that is the unanimous testimony of the greatest and wisest mystical evolutionary traditions. And that is a thrilling thing to give your life for, to be part of that, whatever happens. Because if you do, you'll be adding to the possibility of the realization of the birth in reality. You'll be participating in the divinization of the human race through this great dark night shattering and remaking, crucifixion and resurrection.
Later, I'm making a little note. I want to talk about this new world that you are envisioning, but I want to go back just a little bit, because you mentioned the great works of the mystics that you have translated and that you have been inspired by. And I too know that even in today's world with technology and smartphones and microwaves, I can pull off Hafiz on my bookshelf, open it up to a random page, and it's going to find something that speaks to my heart.
Of
And
course.
it seems fundamental to the mystical experience that once you're in touch with it, just art and life just
Yes.
springs forth. And I've heard just the cognates
Just
of
keep remembering. Just keep remembering the sweetness. You know, the Sufis say the greatest practice is remembrance. Once you've had a kiss from the beloved, once you've realized, oh my God, I didn't know my heart could feel this degree of tenderness and ecstasy. Once that's happened to you, just keep remembering that taste. Keep remembering the beloved. Keep remembering what you tasted, and know that there will always be more, far, far more. Because it's infinite, the one that you're in love with. It's infinite. It will never stop expanding if you just give up to the love.
I feel like you just tapped into maybe why the average person doesn't feel this way.
Yeah.
Is that we've forgotten. I think a lot of people, we go from our subway to the office that's dimly lit with the fluorescent lighting, And we do feel small. We feel just like a lonely, isolated
Yes,
individual.
diminished and lonely and isolated. But even there, don't you think I see guys sitting and talking to each other in bars really sweetly and friendlily. There is still the hunger for connection that flames out in even the constricted circumstances we find ourselves. And if you open your eyes, you see it everywhere. The smiles that people exchange, the ways they brush against each other, the affection that they're reaching for. So there is another way of seeing even the chaos. Is there is a growth happening in the middle of the chaos. People know that this is unsustainable, this life. And there are signs that they're grasping for something new, what they don't know. And that's probably why the mystics are here, is what this might be. And that's our job, is to give some language that is so inspiring that people will go through what we'll all have to accept to go through to make this birth possible together, that we'll have something to aim for together, not because it's a fantasy, but because it's embodied in people and worth giving everything to realize globally, because if we lived it, we would be sane.
So this new world, I got to ask you about it, because it seems like the world is ending. There's plastic in the oceans. There's carbon in the atmosphere. Where are you right now, by the way?
Chicago.
Ah, okay. Because we're right now
Yes.
in California. We're at a heat wave, which shouldn't be happening in October. We have fires up north, and Asheville just got hit with that big giant flood. I think we're surrounded by disaster after disaster and warning sign after warning sign. And it seems like the people that need to wake up aren't waking up. So what's the new world? What needs to be born?
Well, the new world is going to be in a very broken down and shattered old world. It's going to rise out of the smoke of the death of the old. It's not going to come in its fullest forms until the destruction that we see already has proceeded along what will be for us unimaginable lines. It's going to get very, very hairy. And this is why the realism of the dark night process is so important for people to grasp, because those of us who've been through dark nights, and I have, is that dark nights work in absolutely seemingly perverse, horrifying paradoxicality. They just seem as if you're going into the blades of a helicopter to be smithereened. That's how they're meant to be. That's not that you're having a particularly bad dark night. That is the dark night process. So we're going to be smithereened. But what the job of the lovers of God seems to me to be is to work on their own divinization, serving with great love in whatever capacity they are called to serve as sacred activists, and participating in this birth to sow its seeds, its golden seeds in human consciousness. And that's what my work has been about, bringing all the great voices from the past and adding to them my own growth as inspired by them, to be someone here who says this birth is happening. It's worth everything. It's going to be born. It will be born almost certainly, I think now, looking realistically at things, in scattered and isolated communities, reinventing life out of unbelievable disaster. But if we see that life with faith and wisdom and evolutionary possibility, they will be able to work with the circumstances to rebuild civilization, but from a much healthier, much more organic, much more compassionate and all-inclusive and all-embracing original embrace. That's what's potentially coming. And that's the best scenario. That's what I think. And I think we're called about, in our own different ways, to be flames of that origin for people, to give them the guts to go through whatever we have to go through to reclaim our original unified selves and start acting as brothers and sisters of the Father, Mother, and start co-creating together for each other out of tremendous love, a new way of being and doing everything. and out of a tremendous desire to enjoy our lives in the only way they can be enjoyed, which is through ecstatic, sacred relationship, the creation, and with our children, and with our friends' children, and with the sky, and with this whole amazing, terrible, extraordinary experience. That's not an impossibility. That's been the seed of every great revolutionary spiritual movement. Now all those seeds have to come together and make us drunk on their wine so that we can go through this period and give everything and sow the seeds with our lives of this tremendous possibility, which is in God's unfolding truth.
The word relationship is coming to mind.
Yes.
And I want to...
It's the key, it's the key, it's the key.
We could talk about relationships with other human beings, with the world, but I want to go into your relationship with God and the different forms that this relationship can take, and how we might view our relationship to God from this idea of oneness, in which case there's a complete merge.
Oh, you are such simple questions.
Well, some people refer to themselves as children of God, right? And sometimes the Sufis call themselves servants of God. And there are some people in this world who think that they are soldiers of God. And I thought of it because you mentioned being a lover of God. And that's another thing we find so often in the mystical text. God is a friend. God is a lover. God is the beloved.
The lover is for me, the best position, because if you're the lover of God, you get to be shown by God how to love God in everything and through everything. You love God in the beauty and in the terror. You learn, God teaches you. And then you love God because you begin to realize that God is giving you all of this for your own forging, for your own deep understanding. Terrible things, even more precious sometimes than the beautiful things, because they kill in you what was killing you. So that's the love that grows. And with that love comes astonishing initiations into moments of just pure ecstatic being as it is in your ordinary life with someone you love, or the cat you love, or just the carpet.
You say cats?
Yes. Cats are the key to everything in my secret life. I've got one cat who's now been with me 16 years and who is absolutely the beloved with fur, and has taught me everything I am beginning to know about love, I have to say, yes.
I'm thinking about you being in Chicago. And you also go to India a lot.
Well, I was born there, yeah.
Yes. And I think there's a temptation in the spiritual life to become the recluse, to become the monastic, to go to the ashram, to go to the monastery.
Yes.
But I feel like your life is one of integration. I'm not going to presume to tell you about your own life right now.
No, thank you for mentioning that glorious possibility. Yes.
Why aren't you in your tower writing poetry? Like, I don't know, Saint Teresa. What brings you to stay engaged in this life?
Because what a lovely question. I think it's because the fun is really just beginning for me. I've come to the moment in my life where I feel astonishingly free. So free to go off and sit on one leg if I want to in the Himalayas, but free also to engage with this tremendous transformation that all of us are now in, because my own experiences told me this is an unprecedented transformation, and there are unprecedented dangers, some of which I know and can help people with, and there are unprecedented possibilities, just the fringes of which I'm beginning to know, and which I can certainly try and help people with. So I've got to start, however ragged the dance, I've got to keep dancing for my own pleasure, for my own joy, because my deepest joy comes from being useful, if possible.
Let's talk about this relationship with this natural world, of which we are given beautiful things, blue skies, gorgeous flowers, and in return, we give nothing but destruction. I'm curious how you perceive this world. Is it Mother Gaia? Is it God's creation? Is it...
No, the creation's the body of God. It's the beloved's body. So everything in the creation is utterly sanctified and holy by its existence. And if you ever, whatever tradition you belong to, have an experience of that overwhelming one beauty, one truth, one force living in and as everything, if it ever touches you, it changes everything for you, because you realize that you've been put on the earth to deepen that experience and to live the life that, if you lived that experience ordinarily, would suddenly flame out for you. An amazing new kind of life, which would look like the same to outsiders, but would be lived with a completely different level of tenderness and passion, desire to connect.
One beauty, one truth, living as everything. I feel silly reading another passage of yours because I could just hear you talk, but I want to read this out loud. You write, if you are really listening, if you are awake to the poignant beauty of the world, your heart breaks regularly. In fact, your heart is made to break. Its purpose is to burst open again and again so that it can hold ever more wonders. Tell us about the heart, Andrew.
Oh,
The nature of the heart.
what a wonderful question. I think the first thing that I would say is a story by Rumi. It's a beautiful story. It comes from his table talk. And it's the story of Joseph, who was abandoned by his brothers and then became head vizier of Egypt. He ruled Egypt, this man who'd been thrown down a well and tortured and beaten by his brothers. And Joseph's great quality was his unbelievable beauty, his physical beauty that reflected his soul's beauty, because Joseph was a very high adept and his whole presence radiated beauty. And he had a best friend who loved him and said to himself, what can I possibly give Joseph? He has everything. He's vizier of Egypt. He is incredibly rich. He's incredibly powerful. He is adored because he's noble and he's honest. What can I give him? And what he ends up giving Joseph is a mirror in which Joseph can see his own face as his friend who loves him sees him. And that's the one thing that we can truly offer God, is that mirror of our absolutely adoring heart, our heart open in longing and in tenderness and in faith and in humility and in ecstasy, because we know that we belong to that vast heart. And then it will open our heart to reveal that through its own miracle, we have a heart as vast as the heart that we're opening to. And that's what the last parts of the transfiguration process is about, is realizing, yes, it's true. I truly do love every leaf. Who knew? It's because the love is new in you, and that knows. That's what's happening on the earth in so many extraordinary ways in the middle of all of this carnage. And that is what we need to concentrate on very, very intensely, not ignoring the carnage, not responding to it, but not letting it defeat the will to this birth that is at the core of our human adventure. This is the secret meaning. Here we are being called to embody it and transmit it and live it so that it can become real. How extraordinary that seems to me.
I love that. We have a heart as vast as the heart we are opening to. And as soon as you said that he gave Joseph a mirror, I was thinking about how we can be mirrors to each other and how we can reflect back the inner secret beauty, the divine.
And the fun of chatting like we're chatting. How wonderful to have a friend to talk to.
Yes.
I think a lot of it is in the deepest sense about friendship. When you talked about embodiment being very natural, it was more than natural. Like the word that came up to my heart was intimacy. I think Dogen, the 13th century Japanese mystic, who's one of the greatest of all mystics, said in 3 words the truth about enlightenment, as far as I can grasp it. And that is, enlightenment is intimacy. It's being intimate with the moment, with the person, with the thing, with the situation with the entire mystery naturally without thought, beyond thought, just by the attunement of your whole love being. That's awakening. And that is possible for everyone listening to this. It's not an impossible goal. It's possible if you believe it and if you do the simple disciplines that will enable you to experience it in such a way that will make you drunk on the possibilities that you glimpse through grace. They are endless. They never end. They go on expanding in ways that keep you on your knees. That's what they're meant to do. That's the difficulty of that vision of enlightenment as a static thing. It's actually not a static thing. It's an entrance into a way of knowing through unknowing, through constantly staying on your knees, through opening to possibilities you can't even dream of until they're dreamed in you by grace.
Let's draw this to our very human relationships and what it means to love another human being. Because I've seen both perspectives where people lament that a person's idea of love is limited to one person at one time, and it's nothing compared to the limitless love of the divine. But so many of the things that we talked about, like, when you truly meet somebody, you can never truly know them on the most intimate level. So the meeting of another human being in of itself is a great mystery. And I do think that our human love could potentially be a gateway to divine love.
Oh, yes. No, absolutely. I've just spent 3 years writing this book about Jesus and Mary Magdalene, in which I'm really trying to say as nuancedly but as loudly as I can, if you make Jesus non-sexual, you prevent love consciousness from divinizing the whole of human nature. How can you have a redeemer who is non-sexual, since sexuality plays such an enormous role in our way of being, right? In our living of our lives. It's such a revolution is coming of love embodied. It's not a transcendent love. It's a very pragmatic love. It's a love in the body. It's a love lived in the core of life. It's not something that enables you to float out. That's the wrong kind of love. It's the love that actually helps you arrive right in the moment where you find yourself, right? That's a new state. It's not a series of thoughts. It's a state. It's a quantum subtle leap of embodiment.
I'm wondering if any of this connects to a course that you recently released, which I believe was recording with a co-teacher of yours on Sublime Love, Becoming One with the One. And what would you like to tell us about
my God. It was
Sublime Love?
Well, thank you for mentioning this course. It's so sweet of you and so generous of you, because the woman that I had the honor to teach this course with is a woman called Kerry Hyde, Hide, and she produced a book called Love's Wanting, which was such a revelation to me because it is such a holy and deeply meditated and exquisitely written meditation on the path of becoming one with the one, beyond names, beyond forms, beyond any words. And I loved the book so much that I really wanted to meet her. And then we had the idea of teaching together on sublime love, on the love that awakens in the heart when the heart turns to the heart to become one. Of course, your heart starts with semi-selfish desires like, please protect me and please show me that I am lovable and all the other things. But eventually the experience is start to happen and you realize, oh my God, this is a beauty so immense. This is a love so wild, so holy, so ecstatic that you can't anymore believe that you have anything to do but to love more and beyond thought what is being revealed to you so that it can become your living experience and be infinitely expanded, which is what it will be. Because just as when you fall in love with a human being who is worthy of your love, the experience can expand over sometimes 4 decades. Of great marriages at the end are ecstatic. These two people find out who they truly chose. So that, of course, happens in the most monumental way in the mystical life. Is that, oh my God, you chose when you were young the beloved, and then the beloved slowly shows you the immensity of what you actually chose.
My heart is just warm from hearing this perspective. I like how you said marriages are ecstatic as the people find out who they truly chose. And again, it's quite contrary sometimes, because some people do end up in divorce court when they say, you're not the one I married, or you're not who I thought you were.
A lot of work goes into that discovery, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of listening, a lot of lying awake at night, but you work it out just as you can through grace with God. You just come to that fundamental acceptance which baptizes everything with radiance. It's all here right now, all of it.
Fundamental acceptance that baptizes everything with radiance. As we're winding down, I want to go back to something you mentioned, what seems like a long time ago, on simple practices that we can.
Yes.
Because it's all right here, right? It's all underneath our nose. You mentioned just saying the name of God being a simple practice. But what are other simple practices that most people can do to begin to bring this perspective into their life?
Well, I think let's start with the very simplest. Let's start with breathing. In one of the great tantric poems, one of the great tantric poets says, "You are the breath inside my body." So just take that line in and just do some simple breathings and realize that that breath that you're breathing is the breath of life itself, the breath of the life force that jets from the invisible, that jets from the mystery to you nakedly, directly right now. So you start with the most basic original practice, which is the most wonderful to do, because everything that you do that is original and simple will get you back to your original self faster. And the second practice is really to say the name of the beloved and to really say it. But when we say the name, it's really not saying the name, it's praying the name. It's burning with adoration for the name. It's focusing through your saying of the name, all your deepest longings for wisdom, for unity, for union with reality. You've got to be the lover saying. It's like you were lying on this pillow of light with the creator of the universe and saying the name of the beloved to the beloved. It's got to get to that abandon of adoration, and then amazing things start to happen. Love teaches you directly when you've shown yourself capable of abandonment to love. Why would love turn up earlier? It has to show, you have to show that you're capable of losing it for love. And then love steps in and you start really losing it, but in the best and most liberating kind of way. So all of this is true. The great mystical traditions were not lying to us. They were mapping out a path that many of us in this time are on and know to be absolutely true in the most amazing way, and to begin to equip us for this next step, this evolutionary shift, which I think I'm recognizing to be unprecedented. And I think many evolutionary mystics are recognizing this. We don't have the language for what's now required for us, but we can do the tuning to the wisdom that will give us the steps and the language that we need. So there's another level of humility that's being asked to get into alignment with this massive task ahead of us. But it's not impossible. It's possible because grace and mercy are infinite. If we want it, we can have it. If we don't want it, we will die out and the world will die out. So it all depends upon the depth of our desire for ourselves, for the world, for our children, for our friendships, and for every single moment of our remaining lives. Do we want it to be lit up with purpose and passion and deep, deep compassion for the future, or do we want to live in fear and denial of a crisis that could help us birth ourselves into a new kind of human being?
Yes. I love the emphasis on the breath. You mentioned this line, "You are the breath inside my body," because I was thinking about the Kabir line that God is the breath inside the breath. And I like the
It's true too,
coming back
right?
to, where's the breath? It's right here. It's in our
That's
body.
the other line you could
Yeah.
use. You are the breath inside my body, and then you are the breath inside the breath, because there's both you and God breathing together when you breathe. And that's a very important realization, that you are a unique aspect of the God force that created you, having a unique relationship with that force that only it and you will ever know. Isn't that amazing? It's such an amazing realization, isn't it? We can share the treasures of that relationship, but the moments of it will always be the most private and hidden of our biography, won't they?
Absolutely. Well, my friend, our time is winding down.
Been lovely. I enjoyed every single moment of it. Thank you so, so much.
I do have to ask the question I ask all of my guests. We've had over 140 episodes of this podcast, so each guest gets this question, which is, what do you wish everyone knew about love?
About love?
Yes.
I wish everybody, including myself, knew that it was always available in its totality at every single moment.
Beautiful. So, Andrew Harvey, andrewharvey.net is your website. Is there any upcoming program, retreat, book that you want people to know about right now?
No, I would if you found what I've had to say exciting, my friends, I wish you would check out the sublime love that I did with this amazing Australian mystic, because we plunged deeply into the kind of mysteries we've been exploring. And through deep excavation of two great women mystics, Hadovich and Bechtel, and then two great explorations of two great evolutionary male mystics, Father Bede and Teilhard de Chardin, we open up what sublime love actually means and what it initiates you into. And it's, although we're using Christian mystics, it's a message that transcends any ideology. It's a path of evolutionary transfiguration that we're offering through these great pioneers of that path for us now, for this great transformation we're going through. So I'd be honored if you investigated it and plunged into it.
Well, St. John of the Cross would say, I feel like you are a living flame of love, and it's been such a joy to speak with you, to bask in your warmth and your light, and I'm just smiling from...
Back to you. It's been lovely to be with you, my friend. Thank you so much for your beauty and warmth and kindness and generosity of spirit. Thank you. It's been lovely to pass this time together.
Thank you, Andrew.
God bless you.
Wow. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you remember all of the valuable lessons that Andrew shared with us today, including reality is so simple, but we make it so complicated. There is one beauty, one truth, living as everything. Just chant the name of God and love will teach you directly what you need to know. The mystical experience removes all the barriers to loving completely with an awakened mind, ecstatic heart, and a naturally loving sensuality. This love is absolute tenderness. Yes, we, humanity, is in a collective dark night of the soul, which carries with it an enormous potential for the birth of a new kind of divine humanity. The divine is the exact breath inside your body. So breathe it in and stoke the burning fire of love in your heart. And remember, you are perfect just the way you are. You are lovable, loving, and loved.
Thanks again for listening to the Learn to Love podcast. To learn more about the show and your host, head over to zachbeach.com or theheartcenter.com. You can also follow Zach on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.